So today we're diving into a text that is just unbelievably profound, written under the most extreme circumstances you can possibly imagine. It's called Im Habanim Semecha, and it was penned by Rabbi Yisahar Shlomo Teichtal, not in a comfortable study, but from a hiding place in Budapest, right in the middle of the Holocaust. And he was wrestling with a question that, was tearing at the very soul of his people.
And that question was, well, it's the question, isn't it? When you're facing absolute, just incomprehensible evil, where is God? I mean, how could you possibly keep your faith when the entire world has turned into a slaughterhouse? This wasn't some philosophical debate in a classroom. No, this was the raw, guttural cry of a people being systematically wiped off the face of the earth.
Okay, so what did he say? Well, Rabbi Teichtal didn't offer up any simple platitudes, no easy comforts. Instead, from right there, inside the horror, he came up with this radical, almost shocking reinterpretation of the catastrophe. He basically argued that the suffering, it wasn't meaningless. It was a message from God, a wake-up call of the highest order. So he frames this whole idea using a really beautiful concept from the Song of Songs called Dodi, Dofek, which means the voice of my beloved is knocking. But this isn't some gentle tap on the door, no. He saw all this immense suffering not as God being absent, but as God delivering a violent, desperate knock on the door, a wake-up call so loud, so earth-shattering that it was absolutely impossible to ignore.
Now, this idea isn't totally new. It's actually rooted in a much older concept, something called the Shavlei Mashiach, which literally means the birth pangs of the Messiah. You see, the ancient sages taught that just like childbirth comes with intense, agonizing pain, well, the birth of a brand new, redeemed world would also be preceded by an era of just unparalleled global suffering. And the prophet Isaiah gives us the core metaphor here. It's so powerful. The pains aren't death throes. They are labor pains. So think about that. Each new spasm of suffering, as absolutely horrible as it is actually a sign that the birth of this new era is getting closer. So the pain isn't the end. It's actually a necessary part of this creative, this redemptive process.
Okay, but that still begs the question, right? Why? Why would an all-powerful, all-loving God choose such a brutal, painful path to redemption? It's a huge question. And Rabbi Teichtal, well, he didn't just give one simple reason. He gave a really complex, multi-layer answer, which we can break down into three main ideas.
So here's his three-part logic. First up, suffering can act as a substitute for merit, kind of like a spiritual payment to earn redemption, especially when a generation has, fallen short on its own. Then, for his second point, he pulls from the great mystic, the Maharal of Prague. The idea is that just like in nature, you need a void, an emptiness, before you can have a big new creation. So this immense suffering, it was that spiritual vacuum, clearing the way for an equally immense redemption to rush in. And third, and this is probably his most critical point, the suffering was a forceful push from God. It was designed, literally designed, to make life in exile so completely unbearable that the Jewish people would have absolutely no choice but to finally go home. And to explain this push, he uses a couple of really powerful analogies. Remember the story of Noah? The dove only came back to the ark when it couldn't find anywhere else to land. Rabbi Teichtal's point is, if the Jewish people get too comfortable in exile, they'll never want to come home. So the suffering, it's like the floodwaters rising, just washing away every last bit of comfort, leaving no choice but to return. So, who is this push for? You might think it's just for the righteous, right? But according to Rabbi Teichtal, this divine plan is, well, it's shockingly inclusive. It is not just for the pious or the observant. No, this knock on the door is for every single Jew. It doesn't matter how assimilated they are, how disconnected they feel. And he uses this amazing parable from the Rebbe of Apta to explain it. He says the righteous, they're like a bird in a hunter's hand. They're separate already, easy to release. Then you've got the people in the middle, kind of assimilated. They're like a fetus in the womb. Connected, sure, but still distinct. They need a birthing process. But then you have the fully assimilated. They're like gold that's completely melted down and mixed with worthless metal in a furnace. They're so intertwined with everything around them that God himself has to, metaphorically, reach right into the fire and pull them out one by one.
And this is the crucial point. The plan is absolute. Not one soul will be left behind. Rabbi Teichtal points out something staggering. Even those Jews who thought of themselves as 100% German or 100% Hungarian, well, the Nazi racial laws came along and suddenly reminded them of their Jewish identity. In his view, this was prophecy being fulfilled. It was a divine guarantee that no one, absolutely no one, would be forgotten.
And just to drive home how radical this idea of inclusion is, he quotes another rabbi who taught that even the wicked son from the Passover Haggadah, the ultimate symbol of Jewish rebellion, the one who says, "What does all this mean to you?" Even he will be part of the final redemption. Okay, so this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it might be the most surprising part of his whole argument. After all this heavy talk about suffering and divine plans, the ultimate key to redemption, it's probably not what you're expecting. He tells a story about the great Rabbi of Belz. Someone asked him, "What do we do? How do we bring the redemption?" And his answer was so simple and so profound. He said that big, mass repentance, that'll happen after the Messiah gets here. The real work we need to do right now, beforehand, is for Jews to just love one another, unconditionally. And the logic is really powerful. This bottom-up, unconditional love, especially for the people who are most estranged, most assimilated, that's the only thing strong enough to reunite a people that's been fractured and scattered all over the world. It's the human part of the equation, the thing we have to do to get ready for the divine part.
So this gives us the final roadmap to redemption, a clear sequence of events. Step 1, the suffering pushes people out of exile. Step 2, unconditional human love brings them all together. Step 3, they physically go back to the land of Israel. And only then, once they're back home, on the land, can that final spiritual awakening, that mass repentance, actually happen. For him, the physical return had to come first. It was non-negotiable.
Tragically, Rabbi Teichdal was murdered by the Nazis right before the war ended. But his book, his ideas, they survived. And they leave us with this incredibly challenging thought that even in the absolute darkest moments, there might be a hidden message. A message pushing us towards unity, towards home, towards some kind of redemption. And so it leaves us all with a question to think about. If suffering can be a divine knock on the door, what could its message possibly be for us today?